Well, good morning, everybody. Here we are again, Integrate, second day. With me, I have Sandro Pereira, known MVP in the community for quite a long time. How long have you been an MVP, meanwhile?
Since 2011, previous on the
2011.
BizTalk MVP, then an integration MVP, and now I'm Azure MVP, focused on enterprise integration.
Yeah, really good. Well, yeah, who doesn't know him? Of course, he's very famous because of his blog. He has written so many blog articles in his personal post, but also via our own website on both topics, right? Not just BizTalk, but also
Exactly.
the Azure part. Yeah. Yesterday, Sandro delivered a session about migrating away from BizTalk to Azure Integration Services, which is actually a topic that we're going to discuss in this podcast as well. Yeah. So, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit more?
So again, I work at Debscope, a consultant company in Portugal. I'm the head of enterprise integration, and many people knows me about BizTalk and think that I'm doing BizTalk all the time, but that's not true. I do enterprise integration. That means I work in BizTalk server and Azure Integration Service. So everything that is Microsoft focus in terms of integration. Me and my team works on that field. So I've been here for a long time on the community.
Since we were in the beginnings, right?
Since the beginnings, old schools with these guys, and still going. So it's kind of a good way to refresh our minds and learn. Always learning from what is there. So
Yeah. Small side step. What do you think of the conference this year?
Smaller, but good. Still, amazing topics, good speakers. I would like to have more time on stage. It is what it is. We need to feed that, but it's always one of my favorite conferences to go.
Yeah, that's really what we've seen since the pandemic, right? Because before the pandemic, we had probably maybe around 400, 500, maybe even 600 people at the conference. But since the pandemic, those numbers just went down.
I saw that some years ago in Excel. That's almost 600 people.
True.
But then was when everything was on premise, on site.
Exactly.
Now with these online stuff, still great, but we miss the networking. That's why it's important these local events and presential events, because the networking is good for having also.
True. Just great conference. Not because I'm part of the team, but just so much fun.
I helped building this first event, so
correct.
It's kind of
BizTalk crew,
something that we like, because we were in the beginning, and since then we are
indeed
here. So it's good.
You, Sandro, Nino, Sravan himself,
the
Nino,
first BizTalk summit, and then it was a long ride. I see. It's happy to be here and still see this event growing. It's good.
Still also see new people joining, but also a lot of the people who were already there back then, who are still here, right?
Yeah, still. There's many familiar people that from BizTalk, and now is going Azure integration. So
exactly.
Awesome.
Azure integration, that's what we're talking about in this session, migrating at least. So that's really the trend, right? There is no clear roadmap for BizTalk. At least we haven't heard anything.
No, exactly.
About if they are further extending the lifecycle.
It's like I said, BizTalk is not going away soon. Okay?
No.
So we still have a long-term support. So we have 28 long support and then extended support to 30. But you have to consider that SQL is going out of support before BizTalk is going to support. So at some time, I will think that Microsoft will support a new SQL and a new platform alliance, but still we don't have a clear road to go there. And it's not about BizTalk is going away or not. It's many companies are going to move away from BizTalk because they want to innovate or modernize their landscape.
Exactly.
And it's not because BizTalk is going to die soon.
No.
but they want a different direction. So
Yeah.
they want to move away from BizTalk and go to the Azure integration because they can be more dynamic. They can
Yeah,
connect
more
all the
agile.
pieces. They can do a lot of things in a different way. And sometimes it's going to be hard to find these skills about BizTalk, and probably will find new guys and skills that they are difficult to find nowadays with BizTalk,
True.
and they want to move away. Okay, and so it's important to know how we can move away. Okay, because I do think that for moving away from BizTalk, you have to understand what is BizTalk and how stuff are running inside BizTalk.
Yeah. What is BizTalk, but also how does a BizTalk solution look like? I mean, there can be so many different scenarios. Is it just message-based routing, or do you have huge orchestrations? Do you have huge mappings? How do you connect to the outside world? So many varieties that are all just so important.
And you have to think about there are solutions in BizTalk that work the same way since 2004. Okay? That's kind of the stability that BizTalk provides you with. That you see that they are migrating from BizTalk to BizTalk, but the rules,
The concepts, the core concepts
are the same. And many people put the file on the folder, and that file you have to do it and process them and do whatever they want. Okay, and I will say that when you are moving away from BizTalk to Azure integration, try to modernize and innovate how you are doing the integration. But saying that, it's not that easy to implement that.
No.
Because that needs business to be aligned with that. And, well, if we can change the integration, it's kind of easy to put that work in a different way, but put the source systems and the destination systems be aligned with that, that's more hard because they need to also provide changes.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't have manpower, they don't have time, they are not aligned with that.
Yeah.
So they will say, I'm going to continue to put that file in that folder. It's up to you. You can do whatever you want, but I still need to do that.
Internally,
okay?
yeah.
So you cannot change that way that they work, but you need to adapt a little bit and say how we can do the same, but away from BizTalk.
Yeah.
So it's not easy. That's why I say that it's a long time to do this kind of migration, and then you have to think about how to implement all of these in a different way, because there is kind of no one-to-one match. You cannot say, okay, I have a message box in BizTalk. We don't have a message box inside Azure integration. So with the most close that we have is the service bus. But the service bus is just messaging, so it's not the same as the message box. Okay, the principle is the same because the message box is the central place of PubSub.
Exactly, you can use it.
But it has more. It's PubSub tracking and a lot of things. No, persistence and all of these kind of stuff.
Yeah.
No, so it's not the same. And there are certain scenarios that you can say, okay, we can do the same with service bus, but well, size matters, price matters.
You bet.
Okay? And some companies may not think about these on day one, but in the long run, the story is how can I reduce costs in Azure also. Okay, so if you kind of have this concept about, okay, I'm going to migrate, but I need to understand what are the service and what is the cost, then you probably provide a better service to that companies. No, it's quite easy to go to premium to everything.
Yeah, but it's a bit costly, right?
That's going to be a little bit costly. And I'm not against nothing with premium. No. Sometimes we have to go premium, of course, because we need that capabilities. Okay, but in some cases, we just want to process a message. If it fails, it doesn't care, so it's not priority. We can retry later on. Maybe tomorrow there is going to be the same batch, and you just need to do that. So maybe we don't need premium for that. So we can adapt a little bit on that story.
Yeah.
It's not simple. You have to kind of based on requirements, maybe you have to understand and design the solutions to work in a different way, but it's still possible, okay? And there are certain functionalities that are not yet available. For example,
correct.
Business rules that we saw today with the session of Dan is now kind of in private preview, I guess.
I believe so.
Or public preview. It's a good way to migrate some of these capabilities.
It's a start, but it still has a deep nature in BizTalk, right?
Okay, but that business rules for me is now just to migrate the BizTalk stuff that exists and put it in Azure. So I would like to see the business rules acting as a good migration story, but implementing the new solutions. Okay, so the new integrations that we can build also use that kind of business rules capabilities. We are not yet at the moment on that story. Good for migration, not good for new stuff. It's going to happen now.
No, indeed, it just needs to be in JSON and everything, and we don't want a downloadable, executable, to compose those business rules and that kind of stuff, right? It just needs to be done from the portal, so all that's good.
But it's a start, right?
It is a start, just like you said, for migration it's fine.
So for migration and moving, and I think that was the first intention of Microsoft, to provide this business rule engine, was to help people to migrate the solutions and move fairly easy with that. But there are other ways to implement, even if you don't have business rules. Depending on the type of business rules, you can use a Key Vault for that. You can use a SQL database for that, because certain rules are very easy to design.
Implement,
Some complex rules, maybe it's not that easy to accomplish, but still you find different ways to accomplish the same.
Correct. Just for static values, you can easily use Key Vault, but if there are any conditions, like what we've seen in Dan's sessions, with one rule ruling out other rules or complementing other rules, you can't simply store that in one static value in Key Vault, right? So
Key Vault, app configurations.
Of course, that works just fine. So indeed, the migration, it is a gradual migration. Clearly, that it can't be done otherwise. There won't be a big bang unless an organization would only have one simple integration. But it is a gradual process. Can you tell a little bit about the experience, what you've seen with customers where you have done migrations?
It's again, as you say, it's not going to be a big bang migration, because that's going to be crazy, because just
way too risky.
Even if they are simple solutions to migrate, because all the companies, we have simple integrations and more complex integration, but even the simplest integration, they will take a little bit time to migrate, because it's not about the technical stuff. We can easily do the technical part. It's getting, again, the business aligned, all the teams aligned for the testings, accepting testings, and so on and so forth. Because
making it live.
Make it live. So even migrating BizTalk to another BizTalk version is sometimes complicated to put everything aligned and make the business do the acceptance test and move it away. Okay, it's a little bit simpler, because sometimes you just disconnect and connect without them knowing. But in this case, we are switching the technology.
Exactly.
So acceptance test must be done and validate if everything is going to work as the same way that suppose, or the innovation that we provide and be able to change that works the same at the end. Okay. So accepting tests and all of these, that will take time. So big bang migration is out of questions, okay? Because you can easily spend 1 year, 2 years migrating, depending on the footprint that you have inside BizTalk. You can easily spend all of this time, okay? And sometimes when maybe not everything is ready, we can use the hybrid integration. So make small pieces move to Azure, connect BizTalk to Azure
To the cloud.
using the Azure connectors and features that is available at the moment in
Gateway,
BizTalk.
service buses, you name
And
it.
do this hybrid until we can switch and move everything to the cloud. So there is no mandatory rule to force you to go. You're based on your organization, based on your team and requirements. You can choose step by step, moving away, do this hybrid integration, and then finally move everything away from the BizTalk until the other systems are ready. You know, and maybe a feature is going to be available in 1 month. So while it's not there, let's do this hybrid integration, and then when it's ready, we actually move away that and migrate that small piece. But again, main thing that people need to understand is about how you choose the proper components in Azure that fits in the BizTalk.
That's an important
because
design decision.
There is no pipelines inside the Azure. One thing that is always that I really like in BizTalk is the way that we develop the solutions and then configure later the solutions. So we deploy and then we bind that. So sometimes we don't care about if we use a file connector or the SQL connector or the FTP connector. My design is that we focus on the message, and then we configure later on channels.
What we're going to do with it.
Because when you design the BizTalk solutions, it's about the message itself.
Correct.
Okay. The mindset in Azure is different. Okay, because focus is more about the connector. There is no dynamic connector. Okay. Connectors are very static, except the HTTP connector, because you can do a lot of things with HTTP. The others are kind of static. You set up that connection, and that's it. You cannot change it in runtime. Okay, which makes it a little bit hard to kind of have this flexibility about BizTalk. Okay? We use in dev we use no authentication. In production, use basic authentication. We don't need to care about these designing our solutions. Because we can just configure the adapters in configuration in runtime. What's going to happen inside Azure? So you have to kind of understand is changing that through the CI/CD process is not very easy to accomplish. Okay, so you have to kind of design solutions that can fit that scenario. Okay, so I try to avoid calling APIs directly from my logic apps, just because of all of this. So something may change during dev and production. I will prefer to deploy my APIs in API management with a simple policy. I can switch the authentication, and I don't need to worry about changing 10 logic apps just because the connector changed. I just move that API. That's it. My logic apps still working the same, but connecting to the API management instead of directly to my APIs, my web service, and so on and so forth. This is learning process that we are based on when we implement and learning for failures. We can just fine tuning all of these, but.
Indeed, especially if you come from that BizTalk background where everything is static within the same version of BizTalk. It's a completely different way of working, right? Because just like you said, that Azure platform is constantly evolving, and you might constantly need to adapt or at least be aware of any changes that are happening.
And I play a lot with Legos with my son, and I do think Azure is a Lego. Okay,
True.
We play with a Lego.
Yeah, it's just building blocks.
It's just a bunch of services that we can start building our castle and our figures. And we play with it, which is amazing. We have a flexibility of creating everything. BizTalk, you have a box, a black box, and so you can do whatever you want with this black box.
Within the box.
Within the box. We can extend it in different ways because you can extend everything inside BizTalk. Okay, otherwise you can create an API and call that, and you can do whatever you want. That's why I say I don't need a new major investments in BizTalk. I just lean platform alignment
is fine.
just to maintain the clients that are still there, but in a support way. Okay. With Azure, it's just choosing the correct pieces, mount what you are creating, and you have to have this kind of flexibility, but understanding what is the BizTalk also and what are the features.
Correct. No? You need a completely different skill set indeed. If you start with Azure, ideally you would have a fairly good knowledge of all the most commonly used technologies for the different patterns that you're working on, or at least also the different patterns that needs to be migrated. Speaking about that, we are running out of time. I hear that you're going to write another article, another book, I must say.
Yes.
Together we have worked, I don't know how long it was, at least 1 year and a half, something like that, on the BizTalk migration
the
book
BizTalk migration
2020.
was, and I had help from you and Tom. So this one I'm working on myself. I've been working for the last 4 months, I guess. It's a work in progress. I'm creating a book from Migrating, and kind of the story about migration BizTalk to the Azure integrations, create some examples, explaining what are these two monsters, okay? Just kind of do what is one and what is the other, because if you want to migrate, again, you have to understand what you are migrating from, okay? And the only way to understand what is this migration is to know the source to put in a different way. So I'm doing this kind of match to match, and then I'm going to provide some proof of concepts. Again, I'm not going to be crazy to go to a major ADI, AI solutions and migrate that, but getting some simple samples, how do unzip files, process the unzip files also in Azure.
Several commonly
how to
used
zip
patterns.
that, because you know that you also have this kind of stuff, the batching, and again, BizTalk works a lot with XML, Azure with JSON. It's kind of, they are different. Old school, new school, let's call it this way. But the old school is very important because they are not going away. Okay, it's not why you are using XML or text file. You should use JSON. Okay, text files are the most common pattern to change message. So they are not going away. They are here for the last 25 years, and they're going to continue to be there. So but you have to process these messages nevertheless. So I'm going to address this. Again, it's a work in progress. I hope until the end of the year I will close that book. Let's see.
Well, that will be great. Well, I think that's equally as the book that we wrote together. Of course, also this new book. Let's hope that it will help many people to migrate in a secure and clear manner to Azure, because clearly, although
need some guidelines at least.
Exactly. Of course. No, indeed. Of course, we both love BizTalk, but we also see the very rich capabilities and the better agility that you would have in Azure. So there's a very good benefit, and
of course,
Azure is just the way to go.
Nowadays,
that's clear, right?
Want to go for integration.
True.
You have to go there, but in some cases, still, for legacy stuff, mandatory rules. Some of them cannot go there yet.
No.
So it's kind of, you have to have a balance between that. But I do think that Microsoft have a good story, even keeping BizTalk a little bit while on-premise, cloud, hybrid. I think it's one of the best providers with the integration, because he has all the tools that you need.
Correct. Okay. I want to thank you for the podcast. It has been great to do a session like this. It's the first time we do it like this.
Exactly.
But so much fun. So again, thanks. I hope, of course, you enjoy the rest of the conference. And to our audience, well, we hope that you liked this episode of Azure on Air, and we hope to see you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.